Welcome back to Wargaming World and to a new game of BOHICA. Thanks to everybody who watched the how to play BOHICA video, the full video, or the bite size if you've seen those individual elements of that. Just wanted to play a full game here, so put together a game that I've called Evacuation. Just before I start, just wanted to remind everybody there is a BOHICA Facebook group that you can join, as well as the Vietnam War Wargaming of my own and Wargaming World. And if just at this point you aren't subscribed to this channel, this is your point just to click, join and get involved. So what's the nature of the game here with Evacuation? Okay, well, we've got an American platoon. We've got our three sections. One is holding the position at the back here, waiting for a Huey to arrive, which will be in turn 6 of the game. And then we've got two units. One being led by Lieutenant Ross on the left hand side here, advancing towards these two main buildings. On the other we've got another section which is holding a position just advancing on the right hand side, giving some fire support over this open ground. The objective is for the Americans to clear these buildings, just to take the civilians from there and to take it back to the original position, across this open area and back to where the Huey will be waiting, and evacuate them. Longer term, the Americans are then looking to clear this area because they've had advance notice that the NVA have been present and essentially set up some kind of fire position and a trap for the NVA as they come back over the evening, and a potential ambush. However, things aren't all that they seem. As the Americans advance towards these buildings, the reality is that this is an entrance point for a significant network of tunnels, and underneath is not only potential forces, but in actual fact this is a central point for essentially a field hospital, and one of the civilians is a key surgeon who's very valuable to the NVA. And so it's not only the buildings which are entry and exit points into this network. You'll see a little closer, but we've also got areas which may well be areas which are traps or points at which we might have the NVA appearing from. This is one such point, and here's a second. Now, what actually happens in the game, and this hopefully works particularly as a solo player, is that everything is going to be determined by the random events, whether the NVA appear or not, and what exactly happens for the Americans we'll have to determine as we roll during the game. Now you'll see that I've put civilians in both of the buildings, so 3 in there and 2 in the other, and it's also important to note that the civilians do have a skills and drills level, so it's a skills and drills level of 1, with the exception of the surgeon. So the surgeon has a skills and drills level of 5. However, I'm not going to determine which building they're in. And for simplicity's sake, I'm going to say that all of the American forces have a skills and drills level of 4. With everything in place, let's start with turn 1. We've no morale, so let's go straight to random events. And with that we've got 13. Well, 13 is unexpected armour support. So on it comes. I'm going to say that they also have skills and drills of 4, so let's have a look and see how we move. So this M113 has 3 6-inch movements, so we can measure over here that 12 inches is going to take us up to the edge of that part of the table, and a further 6 takes me to there. Now at this point we haven't used any skills and drills, and so what I'm going to do at that point is I'm going to go on Overwatch. And finally, it means we've got 13 no longer on the random table, and it means we've just moving straight to the actions. I haven't got any NVA, and so we're going to move our American forces towards the building to meet their objective. Now this unit is walking, it's in the open, so we've got 4 inches you can go for a walk in each action, I should say. So 8 inches gets us up to this sort of more difficult area. I think we're going to just have to move a little more cautiously, perhaps only 3 inches, and then to progress a further 4 will take us more or less to the edge of this building. And that's where they finish. The other side, it's a little more challenging. This is where the unit finish at the end of turn 1. With no morale tests, we just roll for random events. This time it's a 16. And with that, nothing happens. So we've got more movements from the Americans. Lieutenant Ross orders the front 2 fire teams forward to the furthest building over here. It takes an action to do so, and the remainder of the unit can move up to come into this building in the next turn. Over here the unit will continue to move into position that it's originally set up to have a fire platform, and the armoured vehicle will remain as is on Overwatch. And so this is where we've got to at the end of turn 2 with this unit, whilst over here the Americans are now set up in a position to defend this open area. Start of turn 3. Random events 7. And 7 prompts a booby trap. So that means, although there are no troops over here, we do have troops in this area, and it means one soldier has trod on something very unfortunate. So let's go through the rules about how that works. Okay, it's a random event. We're turning to page 60 in the rule book. If we want to roll to see which type of booby trap it is. Now, I could have set in advance what I wanted. You could, write it down or what have you. But we'll just roll on the on this table to see which one it is. We could also roll in advance and see whether the trap is spotted, so therefore we don't have this consequence. But because we're going to do this as a random event, I'm saying that this has gone off, and let's see what happens. So we need to roll a d20. What do we get? Looks like a 6. And so in fact that's going to be a grenade hanging in a tree, and so as a consequence we're going to see what the impact of that is on a medium mortar chart. Now hopefully you can see this on the rules that I wrote. What I said is that there's only one soldier going to be affected by this. It's still going to make an impact. In actual fact, it's the NCO of this unit. But if the way we'd done it is with a medium mortar effect, that's a 6-inch diameter, so it would have actually affected the 2 figures closest to him as well. But in actual fact, I'm just going to focus on this one, so we need to roll and see what the impact's been. So it's a medium mortar. Consequence of that is it's 16. And with the 16, he's killed. Now I need to do a stress test for all 4 of these men individually. They've all seen a comrade killed, so we need to see what their immediate response will be for this turn. So we do it individually. Now I've worked out the pluses and minuses. It's a -2 because they've seen the man killed. They do, however, get a +3 each because they've got 3 other men around them. So essentially it's a +1 to the roll for each of those 4 men. I just need to step in here and say apologies. I now make an error in the rules, as I should have included an extra 4 with skills and drills, which I should have added when I rolled, or did the subsequent roll for the men. The consequence of what they do ultimately in this game doesn't change in terms of how the unit withdraws. However, it is incorrect rules. So just a reminder is that when we're working out the morale test, you need to add the skills and drills as well as the additional factors before we then roll. Going left to right, that's a 2, we get a +1, but that's 3. 3 + 1 is a 4, 11 + 1, 12, finally 17 + 1, 18. Suddenly that's a big problem, because the 2 men to the left hand side are going to both bolt and run off the board to safety. 12 inches behind them, and behind them is off the table. So these 2 are going to disappear. The one further over to the right hand side is going to be suppressed for this particular turn, and we have finally the furthest man to the right is not affected. So this man at the front, he goes prone, so it means he doesn't move, and he can still act. So he has 4 actions normally, goes down to 3. As I say, he is prone. For the remainder of this turn, I think both of the various fire units will be able to use 2 actions to get up to the buildings themselves, 1 to get in, and then to start talking to the inhabitants, and that will be the end of turn 3. So I'll just make those moves. So this is how turn 3 concludes. The units have got into the building, and I think it's going to take an entire turn in order to convince the inhabitants that they need to leave. Before we get to that stage, however, we need to start turn 4, and the first thing is that we need to take a look at morale. Turn 4, we need to start with morale, so I need to do a test for the individual who is at the moment suppressed. So the variables are that -2 on this roll because he's suppressed, but gets a +1 because he's got a guy behind him, so a -1 to this roll. So we add 1 to this roll. 13 means he's back up and running and be able to act, so we lose the suppression on that individual. Now done the morale, so now random events. This time we get 10. And so with the 10, nothing happens. There's nothing else that happens in terms of a random event. So as I mentioned in turn 3, I think that in order to get the civilians moving out of the building, it's going to take all of this particular turn to make them active. Over on this side, I think I'm going to change the actions for these 3 different units themselves, these different fire teams. For the 2 fire teams on either side, left and right, I'm going to put them on Overwatch, but the unit that's been affected, the man who's been killed, I'm going to have the 2 men talk as 1 action, move to the man behind him, and then try and pick him up and get him back to where the helicopter will be. So at the end of turn 4 you should see this unit with the dice next to it, just marking that it's on Overwatch. Over on the other side we've got the same there, and just at the back there, see if I can zoom in a little, these 2 men are now taking the casualty back and getting as close as they can towards the Huey area, which is where that's going to be picked up out here, and try and get him removed. So we're now at turn 5. We've no morale. We just need to start moving the units out of the building. I need to roll for the random event, and next turn we'll have the helicopter arriving. But at the moment we've had no NVA arriving, but remember that we've already used 4 of the random events, and perhaps it's getting more and more likely that the NVA will appear and contest this area. Turn 5, random event. This time it's 12. And once again, nothing happens. Turn 5, and the evacuation continues over on the far side here. In terms of the building, we now start to remove the civilians. Now, if you remember, the civilians only have 1 skills and drills, but it does give them 2 actions. So the 2 actions we're going to have is to walk. So I'm going to say that it's taken 4 inches coming out of the building and moved 4 inches forward. So essentially, this unit is moving at 8 inches in total. And that's the same case here. I'm going to suggest as well that maybe the civilians aren't awfully keen to leave, so I think 8 inches per turn is a reasonable movement. So we're now going to move into turn 6. We won't need to start with any morale, but also we have the arrival of the Huey. Start of turn 6, there's no morale, but there is a random event. Random event is a 9. Now then, the 9 is that if an unoccupied board is available, then of the 2 nominated areas, an NVA section, a full NVA section will appear. And because this one is free and it hasn't been used, it means that suddenly, in turn 6, the NVA arrive. And here they are. So the NVA have arrived, and I've got out of that area, if you like, and I think there's a genuine line of sight here between these 2 Americans by the building. So we're going to have a look, I should say, at spotting. When I looked slightly wider, there is a line of sight also over to this area. However, the line of sight is with the civilians, so I'm going to say there's sort of like an element of confusion. And in terms of the 3 actions that they've got, I'm going to say they've got to move to get out there. I think there's going to be talking, so whether they would fire or not at in the civilians, I think they wouldn't. And also, it's in there is some reference in the rule book about the fact that we don't fire at civilians. So I think there's a need for talking. There's no line of sight for the Americans there, but there is a line of sight here. So I'm going to say that the front unit, the fire unit of 3 men, can see these Americans potentially. So we're going to have to roll and see whether we have the 3rd action for that unit to fire. Now, as the NVA arrive, I'm going to say that they can act and have the initiative, much as I did with the M113 when that came on and moved, is that they've appeared as part of a random event, come on and fire. I'm going to say that they gain the initiative by having that surprise rather than as we would do in normal turns, to see which one has the initiative first of all. So effectively they do so, and they're going to have the initiative, firing at the 2 men who they can see potentially on this building. So to spot, and we'll start with the officer with the pistol. We've got a definite spot there with 16. I'm going to say we've got 3 and with automatic rifles, 20. Second one is a 2, so I'm going to say that looks like a no. The final man is an 8. Firing to hit with a pistol, 14. Automatic weapon, an 8. Second automatic, looks like a 19. Hit with a pistol, 13. Finally, automatic rifle hit with a 4. So as a result, we've got one wounded man. It's actually Lieutenant Ross, who's suppressed, and the man nearest to him has seen it all happen. So we need to take a morale test. I need to get it right this time. So we start with the skills and drills of 4. The minus is a -2 for seeing a man down. So we're on 2. I'm going to say that we're in soft cover, so it's a +1. That would take it to 3. We've also got one man within 6 inches who's not suppressed, so that's 4. And in actual fact, the lieutenant is next to him. That's another +2, so it's +6 to this roll. And the rolls are 2, so we've got +6 is an 8, but he's suppressed also. So we've had the random event. Now it's the remainder of the turn, so we'll see how the Americans react across here, and indeed over on the other side there, including the armoured vehicle. This unit over here is going to do 2 things. We've got the civilians with us, so they can only move 2 actions, but they are going to run, because the unit is going to tell or shout for them to do so. It's an additional action for the Americans, so that would be 3. The man at the end there is also going to throw a smoke grenade to land more or less in between the building and the area of foliage. Right, the American is moving, so we're going to say a -2 to this roll. Let's see what happens, and that is a 10, which means it doesn't go where he wants it to go. Far away is it in terms of the distance? I think that's 3 inches. Where it lands, 3 inches out the way, I'm going to use like a clock face. So 12 o'clock is up on this line in front of us. Let's see how what the direction is. So 7 o'clock. Ultimately, this is where the smoke comes up, so it's not particularly effective. And this is where the Americans move to as they approach back towards the Huey, which has landed. Over here, both of these men are suppressed, but they can act. It just means they lose one of their actions. As the commanding officer, then Ross orders the units, the remaining men, to move out. So that's a 1 order in terms of talking for the remainder of the units to move with the civilians. So much as we did with the unit, they can move a total of 12 inches. Right, actually, I think the officer, who has 3 actions, he's ordered the unit to move. That's 1 action, and he's going to order both men to throw a smoke grenade, and I think it's going to be a different action for 2 things. So essentially he's going to use all 3 actions. This particular man is going to move, he's going to run 2, so that's 2 actions, and then to throw a grenade it's 2 actions. And with this individual here, I suppose he has 3 actions himself. He could fire a smoke grenade, but instead all I'll do is throw a smoke grenade. And I'm looking to try and throw a smoke grenade into that area. 20 is absolutely right on the money. Yeah, he's looking to throw a smoke grenade into that area, and that's a miss. How far out? By 5 inches direction. 6 o'clock, so I think it's 5 inches short. So this is where I wanted it. It's 5 inches short, which would be in the middle of this building, and 7, so it lands in the middle. 7 inches means that essentially I think it's something like he's thrown the grenade, it's gone inside that building, might hit the roof or what have you, and landed, and then gone off. So the smoke grenade is now covering the wounded man. So we've got mixed fortunes there. We've got smoke all around. We've got the wounded man now covered in this area. We had smoke which landed exactly where we wanted to over here, and as a result the units are withdrawing as requested in this direction and getting towards the evacuation point. We need to have a look and see what these units do over on this side, and indeed the vehicle. Now that unit is on overwatch, but we're going to take one action to move instead. We've seen or heard lots of activity, so it means we're going to move. We can move up to 18 inches, so I think we can move all the way up to that building, and then we can go back on Overwatch up there. So Overwatch up there, I should say. So let's take that into that position there. I'll keep that marker as well. So this unit has now moved all the way to the Huey with what is killed comrade. So he's there ready to be loaded up onto the helicopter. And this unit on the other side here, I'm going to say remains on Overwatch. So that's the end of turn 6. And although the Americans are withdrawing with the civilians, which was the original objective, the aim for it was so that they could then set up an ambush, and quite obviously they've now been interrupted by the advancing NVA over here. Now the units continue to move towards their evacuation, so that is relatively successful. We're going to see in turn 7 what the next things will happen in terms of whether there's further random events, whether there's more of the NVA to arrive, and importantly what will happen with the units here, including the commanding officer. Start of turn 7, and we need to do a morale test for these two individuals. First of all is the leader. So we have skills of 4. We don't get anything for a man being nearby because they're both suppressed, but there are no minuses either. So 4 plus the 11, 15 means he's no longer suppressed. And the man who is next to him, we roll, it looks like a 13. And again, plus 4 means he'll be fine. So with that, both of those men are fine. Next thing to do is to roll for a random event. What do we get there? We get 17. And so 17 is on sight of a Huey appearing, the NVA make a full-scale attack. So what that means is an attack which not only includes infantry arriving from this board edge, but also artillery. And suddenly, by rolling 17, we've got a whole NVA platoon appearing. So their actions, we've got 3 for skills and drills, so they're just going to run out here, and that's why they've got 18 inches running through the jungle. You'll see we've essentially got 3 different sections approaching here and advancing. And suddenly, by the appearance of the Huey, it's triggered a significant response, and in addition to that we've also got some artillery. So let's see what the target for this firing is. And again, I'm doing it because this is part of the random events, so I'm not testing people's which has quicker initiative. We're going to start with this mortar and have it fire. I'm going to say that there is this is the target with observers further afield in like a hilly position, looking down on the area. This is what they've spotted, and so this is going to be the target. So we need to roll and see how close the artillery is with the medium mortars. So we roll a d20. And that's a 19, which to me looks like a hit. Now, it's hit the armoured vehicle. With it being a medium mortar onto armour, it can only do light damage, so we just need to roll for what the light damage is. And so we get a 6. And with a 6, the driver is killed, unfortunately, and with that, the unit isn't going to move. They take a couple of stress points as well. And so that is not moving at any point during turn 7. So in order to act, what I'm going to do is for the 2 Americans here, it's just unrealistic to try and go and get the wounded man out of the smoke. That's we're going to have to leave him. We're going to try and escape and move in this direction, but first we have to test against this unit here. they have an initiative of 3. So start off with the Americans. This plus 4, it's 10 in total. The NVA, well, that is an 18, so they act first. And acting first, I think they're going to move around this side of the building. There's smokes in the way the other side, and obviously this has been activity this way to the 2 Americans. And with that, in terms of moving around the building, they overwhelm the 2 Americans there, including Lieutenant Ross. I'm not going to say that they're going to come round and engage or fire or what have you. I'm going to say that the 2 Americans will surrender and are taken prisoner. The situation is becoming increasingly challenging for the Americans, so with men having to surrender at that point, move further across the table where the armoured vehicle has been hit. We've got these 2 units which are moving towards the Huey at the end, so they're going to continue to move in that direction. We do have 1 unit on the other side there which is on Overwatch. I don't see a reason why they would change their activity first of all, and indeed with the other unit over there which is intended to cover the retreat of these 2 units. So I need to move, essentially it's 2 actions for the movement, 6 inches each, because we're only moving at the pace that the civilians can move. They've got 1 skills and drills, but it means that they can do 2 activities, so it's 2 running activities, 6 inches each, so both units are going to go towards this area at 12 inches. The only other activity is loading of this casualty onto the Huey. So at the end of turn 7, what are we looking at here? We've got an advancing full platoon of NVA advancing across perhaps either side of these 2 buildings, and we've then got the Americans trying to escape to the Huey. The idea originally is that the original orders is that the civilians, and we've got 5 here, would get to the Huey. We've got a casualty on there already when it would withdraw, and with that we can also set up a defensive line for the Americans on the other side of this open field area. So I'll continue doing the turn, see whether we get any other random events, and see a logical conclusion of where we get to the end of this game. Let's start with a morale test for the M113 to see if the unit can get back on its feet, replace the driver, and get past the original suppression that they had. And 15 means that they will do so. I know we had to deduct for a couple of points for stress, but even so they will be able to operate. Just going to point something out that you might have thought why we didn't do a morale test for those 4 men when this vehicle was hit. However, there's all of this foliage in between, so I came to the conclusion that you couldn't actually see it. They could hear it, but couldn't see it, so that's the reason why I didn't do a test. Let's roll for a random event, and with that we've got a 5. Right, well, a random event of a 5 mean it's suddenly torrential rain. So all movement is now downgraded by 1, as indeed is visibility. So for all units it becomes obviously more difficult to move, and particularly for the NVA here, trying to move quickly and get to the Americans before they can move, or at least the civilians can get away with the Huey, I think is going to be a little bit more difficult. So I suspect it's going to really slow the game down. So this is what I'm going to do as a conclusion. As the game has continued and we've got quite a lot of video here, I'm going to stop at this point. I have a feeling this is not dissimilar to how actions might well have finished. It's been a bruising encounter for the Americans. They've lost. They have a man wounded. They've lost an officer in Lieutenant Ross, and also a colleague. We had a man killed over on the far side. The armoured car has been hit. We've had a driver killed there, and although the units are withdrawing, the original objective, which was to clear the building in order to set up an ambush, obviously is not going to take place. For the Americans, the only consoling factor is the fact that they've going to evacuate some of the civilians, which was an objective in itself, and in amongst the civilians is a surgeon, which is of particular use to the NVA. They've now lost the surgeon, lost the action, and the Americans are obviously fully aware that this area is more potentially dangerous than they thought beforehand. So there's certainly a possibility that we return to this table and play a further game. So just want to say thanks very much for everybody who's watched. Anybody who's put in some thoughts, some ideas. Again, mention the BOHICA Facebook group and that of Vietnam War Wargaming for myself, and just a nudge to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Thanks once again, and we'll see you next time.